What's up, everybody? Moths One here, joined by this side. Melvin is a illustrious color caster and analyst at the moment. So welcome back to the desk. Another clean one from Axiz. 2-0
Mm,
currently in this series. What's your initial thoughts? Let me grab them.
I feel a sense of deja vu looking at this second game of the series.
Okay,
Taking a
okay,
look at it compared to the first one, I've got the
okay.
pick bands in front of me.
Hmm.
I don't see much changing on the Axis side.
So I'm seeing a Syndra ban, a Zinzao ban, and because Misfortune was causing some particularly good ultimates for the side of Crest Gaming Act. Get that out of here. You can have a Varus instead. And I would argue the Misfortune looked really good last in game one, but nowhere near as. But this Varus just was nowhere near as good.
I think the Trundle MF combo was a lot more successful for CGA than this current one is. But
Two
one of the
words I never
main,
thought you'd come out
I
with:
know
Trundle
it's
MF. But
not something that I thought would be a significant factor in a playoff series anywhere ever. But one of the things that in both of these drafts we've been looking at and twiddling our thumbs going, is this bans coming out from CGA along with their first pick Renekton in both games.
yeah, yeah. So we've been. The fact is, first thing, let's knock this out, Melvin Issel, is CGA chose Red Side this time around, and
Hmm.
they chose that they wanted to R1, R2 that Varus and that and force Nap back on Citizen again from game one.
And part of the issues when you do that is you take red side, right? And we were curious why, mainly because we were looking at some of these champions going, but if you're first picking the Renekton every time and you're not taking a contested AD between the two teams, why are you not just going blue? And
Mm.
part of the reason is we've seen that typically CGA have a better win rate on the red side. But with that historical data, it has to have the little asterisk of saying, well, that's because you were giving counterpick to Nathan in the mid lane, and right now Kaito just picking Zoe in both games blind. It's not really giving you the same degree of benefit having the counterpick for your support Nathan.
It's not, and I mean let's take it to another level. They've done the same three bands over again. That's a Felios, that is a Ziggs, and there's LeBlanc. So we know that one of these is specifically for Honey. We know that one of these is specifically for Megumin, and we know that one of these is technically a flex for both of them. Except we've only ever seen Honey play the Ziggs,
Mm.
so I'm assuming it's probably only for him. This is kind of alarming because Axis just get to keep drafting the same comp over and over again with very little difference between these matches, and it just seems like they kind of just snowball very micro small advantages. Get a kill here, get a few extra CS letting there, and it's a win for them. What am I wrong? Is that what's
No,
really
you're
happening?
correct. You're definitely on the right track. And I think part of the reason that CGA went for the salty run back in game two is because they were looking at going, well, we had a window in game one. Yeah, it was because Kassin
They did.
sold a Baron and a Dragon, not exactly variables you want to be putting your playoff hopes on, but it was enough that they thought, we can maybe get away with it again. And then Axis just got rid of the MF. And I think that was the most pivotal part of the comp because it's the best ADC, in my opinion, that we've seen Milan on this split, with Varus doing all right in second place. When you're against somebody as good as Honey with Nemo on comfort on both champions, it looks at it and go, okay, you can't really contest that because when you lock in Varus, you need to be winning the lane. You aren't doing that here. The MF at least let you scale into later and pair with your team to have massive team fight impact. The Varus just doesn't do the same thing anymore.
No, no, and it was this very weird thing that we were talking about in between the games. Well, actually, during game number two, where we were like, they kind of got a mix of a poke comp. They need to get early advantage. If they fall behind, it's just going to be terrifying. Axes actually have built-in comeback mechanics. Oriana is almost always relevant. We've seen Oriana's go like 2-5 and like whatever, and then it's like, oh, they just landed a shockwave ultimate. Oh my god, Oriana's ball just shielded, protected. It's like so much damage can just be protected. You've got a Jinx, so you always have comeback potential with that. And coming to you, Malvin, before we go fully into looking forward to game number three, let's just take a thing about these two pick and ban phases. What do you want to see from game number three's pick and ban phase for Crest Gaming Act, and do you expect them to do anything slightly different?
I hope they do something different is the first thing.
Hoping.
So
Okay, sure.
definitely do not want them to try this strategy a third time. And if we're going like completely off the wall, then I would just say if they're not willing to change anything in the roster, put Kaito on Leona and send them support instead, so Nathan can at least play that. Because that
I've
is at
currently
least
got my
giving you a
phone here because it's
mechanism.
the only way I can hear you at the moment, sir. But
Okay, that's
this
fine.
this is
That's
how we're
fine.
gonna have to do it. Live technology. My headphones just broke on me, so don't worry. Well, they didn't break. They ran
That's
out of battery.
okay. You know what, you're talking to me, so that's the important part. At least you're not just, off on the desk talking to other people. I'm glad I'm not that boring. But point
I'm not
being,
ignoring you, sir.
that's the important part. So for this next draft coming in, I need to see this LeBlanc let through, because one of the issues of what you're doing for CGA, right, is you're pinching both Megumin and Honey's pool, but you're doing neither perfectly. You
Sure.
need to commit to one or the other, and you can't do both. Especially considering Axiz are probably just going to choose blue side for this game because they were the higher seed. They get choice
Why
aside 1,
wouldn't you?
3, and 5. Exactly. So this game, I want to see them commit to either banning out a lot of things to do with Honey, including the support thresh. That's an important one. It means that you lose a lot of that safety, and then start to throw things for a loop saying, okay, well, when you don't have a thresh, and potentially the Brom as well, then Zoe actually gets to play the game. But when you have a thresh, Zoe effectively has to land double the bubbles to actually get anything done.
And not only this, I would actually like to go back to a very old champion, because we're saying obviously you have to pick, you want to ban away and hurt Honey, right? Crest Gaming Act, I would love to see them on blue side. First off, I would love to see a full ban of just that Thresh, that Jinx, the Ziggs, and I want to see Milan on a carry that he performed hugely way back in Scouting Grounds. Had a pretty lackluster performance on them in spring. We've seen a few games. It's that Aphelios. I want to see the Aphelios coming back. We might not. But I mean, hey, I was watching back a bunch of clips and it looked pretty solid. So we'll have to wait and see what's going on. I don't think we're fully on draft yet, as the official stream's currently got a timer.
That's fine. That's fine. We've got stuff to talk about because
I'm getting mixed messages. I'm not quite sure
okay.
what we're doing, but anyway, we're going to just keep talking because talking means I get more screen time, and I am one of the most important, so it's fine. It's fine. I can just get an absolute bollocking from my co-founders. Um, do we have any clips you would like to run past us, Melvin Izzle, from that previous game to try and think of maybe a few other actions or directions that we would like to go with?
No, we really don't, because when we were looking at the clips, we were speaking in the off time to the producer, and it was like, okay, is it even worth it to just show more highlights of Axiz stomping? Not really, because it's just this game, right? The difference between the first and the second game for us was that Nemo started landing way more hooks. They are actually looking like their prime Thresh again. And it looks at it and goes, okay, if you're CGA, what do you do? Because that game was snowballed off of an early hook that killed Kassin in the lane phase, killed Milan, sorry, in the lane phase. And then they tried to collapse with Kassin to get something done. They end up dying too. And it's like, okay, well, the game's over at 4 minutes at this point because you've just given the most reliable person in the game of Honey a big gold influx with no cost to them. And it's just like mind-boggling to think, okay, well, how could CGA even fathom coming back from it? Funnily enough, they didn't.
And it's Honey back to back. This is a player well highlighted, but this time he was snowballed in a very different way from game one, Melvin Izzle. And I think that's a really important distinction. We got deja vu, and I completely agree with you on that. Game one, though, was the Hoglet show. Game two, I would argue the enabler was actually Nemo in this game.
100% on that one. They were online to an insane degree, and while everybody else still had a fine performance, there were some less flashy plays coming out from people like Hoglet. Megumin, I would say, was a lot more reliable on the Oriana with some of those shockwaves, at least just using the ball to zone out massive portions of the map.
Please keep talking, Melvin. I
Okay,
just
that's
want
fine.
our producer Chris to just bring up the post-game breakdown because some of these stats for Honey is just like, I just can't. Like 26k this minute. He's almost doing 1,000 damage a minute. He's trying to beat his record.
And you can see right here on the gold graph in the bottom left right there, it never got better. There was a little a very minute peak where the gold lead started to close again around 15 minutes, but after that, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And the point being is, Honey once again committing for that Kraken Slayer into rapid fire cannon build, especially into a poke comp this game more so than the first. It means that they are just always safe, and while they got picked once or twice, every time they ended up dying, more members of CGA went down. So it's just one of those where, even when it goes well, it goes badly for CGA at this point. And it's not to keep harping on for negativity of the team, it's just that Axis are so good, and when you're playing with not your main roster, you really do need weird answers like the Trundle support with the Misfortune if you have a chance to take the games.
Well, before we do go over to our casters, because I do want to give them a few minutes before we actually do go live into the pick and ban phase. I tried to do it, and then they were already into it before I could realize. Giving that heads up over to my casters right now. But this is just, you know, when you look at a matchup and you go, oh man, this could be really competitive. And on our most recent episode of the podcast, head over to our YouTube channel for that one, ladies and gentlemen, or you can search over in Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. We discussed that this could be a really competitive matchup, that Crest Gaming could definitely have the opportunity to beat almost anybody in the LJL, but not like this. This wasn't the roster that we expected it. We needed Alchemy to feel better and come back. Commiserations out to them. Our hearts go out, and we hope you get well soon. But wow, Nation support. Why are they not bringing the Academy mid laner? We know Crest Gaming have an Academy support signed to them. Why are we not bringing them in?
And it just begs the question. It's one we physically can't answer, and it's one that a lot of people will be just pinging question mark to, because you look at it and go, okay, Megumin was not the highlight player of this team, was not the highlight mid laner of the LGL, but you could still see there's a tangible gap just in confidence between these players. And can you blame him? Kaito's played 2 games with the team, lost to a playoffs before playoffs, and they lost both. How can you expect them to come into this game with any confidence behind them?
Absolutely, and you just can't feel like there's a huge opportunity for them. Kaito feels like he's put in a very unfortunate position. Hopefully, though, this is a lot of food and like kind of, all right, this is how you can temper your expectations, and this is when you come into the big league and then all the big boys bring you back down. You're like, okay, that's reality setting in for him. Hopefully in Academy, we can see him flourish and really become a top tier mid laner. Though we'll have to see that. If you're interested in that coverage of LJL Academy, hit a follow over on our Twitch channel, ladies and gentlemen, or our YouTube. You can go subscribe there. I'm all about it at the moment. But I just want to give a heads up over to Nymera and Midnight. I mean, we've got a few minutes here. I think myself and Melvin Izzle have said most everything. I'm going to give you an opportunity here, Callum.
Yeah, I think I'm happy with what we got here. We expect this to be another win for Axis unless we see a completely different draft from CGA, which, while possible, based on the trend, I think it's unlikely.
Well, we'll have to wait and see with that one. But Chris, take us over to our casters.
Thank you very much, guys. Of course, I'm Midnight, still joined by Nymera. Game number 3 looms on the horizon, and I don't know if you're a fan of horror movies, Nymera.
I am.
Ah, lovely. Then this is the equivalent of buying a house that has been abandoned for 20 years. You know what's going to happen to you. You've seen it happen 100 times, and you've still done it 2 times already.
It is. It literally is. I mean, maybe this is a world because you know, in The Walking Dead, the way that they like basically worked out effectively why people were so stupid about zombies. It's like, oh, I'm gonna walk down this dark alley. I gotta go get my stuff. It's down that dark alley, which obviously no one's gonna come help me, and we don't know what's down there. It's because zombie movies didn't exist in that universe. It was a parallel universe where just horror movies were just weren't explored. So welcome to the world of CGA, where they don't understand what happens when you're picking full initiation into a Thresh with a hyper carry. It don't work. So I was just talking with Kazu, coach of DFM, and of course, Spring Split support for DFM on Twitter. And we were both kind of sat there going, huh, so Thresh is pretty good. Wonder why that's still open. Because, from what Kazu was saying, because you have multiple languages in the LJL, it's quite hard to communicate when you're initiating too, particularly the minutiae of when you're trying to initiate too. Like, how do you get all the small points across? So it's quite difficult to initiate, and the best answer into initiation that's open in this current meta is Thresh. So not only are you picking the one composition which is potentially most difficult in the LGL, you're playing it into one of the hardest counters, and you don't even have something like, I mean, this is the point which I brought up as well, is that Nation in the mid lane could at least flex onto something like a Twisted Fate, onto something with a bit of global pressure. You don't have that with Kaito. He is only playing the Zoe, which is great for some things. We can have the shooting gallery, but we've seen that just bluntly not work out for CGA. So not too many answers, plenty of questions. I just have to see a drastic change from this team because they weren't impressing at the end of the split. They're not impressing in playoffs, and they're looking to bomb out. On the other side, Axiz, this could be the furthest they have ever gotten in the LJL. And what dominant fashion it would be. After going 3-0, 0-3 rather, against V3 in the only other playoff match back a year and a half ago, this is such a different change in fates for them.
Yeah, but it's well deserved, right? See, Axis have come in here with a clear battle plan, right? It's not like Axis have made it to finals by accident, right? They didn't stumble their way through the draw, and then find themselves at kind of like, oh crap, what's going on here, guys? They come in swinging, and you can see a team fight breaking off in. This is from the game 2, obviously.
Yes.
This kind of I was gonna say that kind of highlights part of the problem that CGI are having against Axis, which is the compositions. Poke. It has been a poke in game 1 and poke in game 2. And I worry, because I mentioned it in game 2, and we both saw the problem, is that CGA are playing a poke composition like it's a regular standard 5v5.
The thing is, I don't mind if you actually manage to get the backline carry, right? If you catch the mage, you catch the AD carry with the solar flare into a sleep, into a Varus WQ and stuff like that. We called that out right at the start of the draft. Okay, it's not the misfortune, but you land the sleep and your carry, and the enemy carry dies. That's good enough at some points, but CJ couldn't pull that off. So I don't necessarily want to see them go towards that again. I don't know if there's a way you can force Honey off of hyper carries, because even if you do get a better lane in the 2v2, you probably don't get to deny Honey having a good laning phase either, because they did manage to get that one pick under turret with the solar flare when the Jinx didn't have the cleanse, but it feels like there isn't a way to upset what Honey and Hoglet are currently doing. I think I don't know. What are the options? What are the options? I'm sat there and I'm like, if Nation doesn't play the Thresh, you have to ban it. So that's one thing gone. That potentially allows, Megamin a better pick in mid lane if they allow something through like the Renekton, or they allow something like the LeBlanc if you have to pick things away. There are so many different holes in the leaking hull of the HMS CGA that this is only a matter of time until you start hitting the seafloor.
Yeah, and how low can you go? Like, hopefully, again, I think the big thing.
I hear there's this place called the Mariana Trench, which is pretty far down there.
I think CGA have hit there, and they're still finding a way to do.
Say hi to Burning Core while you're down there.
They're making sure it's going to be a bit more than 6 feet, but they're definitely staying down there if they don't change. And I think that's the big thing, is just you have to choose something different. This current phase of what you're trying to do doesn't work. Yes, okay, game 1, we said maybe they're giving it away. They're giving away the Viego, giving away the Thresh Jinx. Like, fine, that's fine. Game 2, I'm willing to say that they're like, okay, maybe we change things up a little bit on our side. Didn't work. Game 3, maybe the problem isn't necessarily you, it's the enemy champions that are causing the problems there. And if nothing else, I think you have to get rid of the Thresh. If you have to choose, actually.
Oh,
sorry, no, I should have asked you first. Thresh, the Jinx, or the Viego? Which one of those three do you have to? Which one do you get rid of?
Like, if you're playing like this, where you need to reach the backline, it has to be the Thresh every time, because it doesn't matter if it is a Jinx. You're already banning the Aphelios. There is a good chance, like I'm saying, you're going to have a hyper carry into the team. I think that's almost a certainty at this point. I don't think it even matters if it's something like an Ezreal or a Senna or whatever. I think that Honey's still going to be safe and outputting damage. My worry is that you're never going to get to that carry if there's a Thresh beside them. That's always going to be the issue, so that has to go. It just has to go.
Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping to see. I think trade out the Ziggs ban that you're currently running, which, as I've said at the start, I see the logic of it, because Ziggs is really, really strong right now. You want to remove a really good carry that we know Honey has been practicing, right? Honey was saying in scrims that he's never getting access to Jinx and Aphelios, so he has to pull out other stuff. Like, he pulled out the MF because he's like, well, I need something else in my wheelhouse. there's no doubt he's got Ziggs in there. But at this point, are you going to lose to are you going to risk losing, I should say, to the same entity 3 times in a row, or do you force Honey to at least show that he's got the Ziggs competently? I think at that point you have to take the gamble.
But then the problem is there that what happens if Kaito doesn't have anything that can actually do anything against the Ziggs in the mid lane? We still have so it looks like we are going into pick and ban. CJ are on the blue side, and I see a Thresh ban from CJ, but we still see the Ziggs ban. It's a bit good, a bit of bad, a bit of huh?
Yeah, I feel like Honey has, because again, we know Honey doesn't get Jinx Aphelios and Scrims. You have to first pick the stuff.
Yeah, you have to first pick that though. So, but now, let me question you this: what happens if you lock in Tristana Braum on the other side? Because Aphelios needs the Braum. I think you need to pick away the Braum right now, because that's the one thing which really goes into it. So I reckon you actually pick up Braum Renekton right here. Lee Sin is also not an awful option, because again, that's like an AD pressure mid. But I think you pick away the Braum because you're sat there against the Aphelios and it's like, okay, cool. That's one option. Or you just completely outrange them. You say, you don't have any engage in your support, that's great. We start picking stuff like well, I mean, normally you pick something like the Ziggs. You pick something like the Varus yourself, or something longer range, and then the Aphelios Braum can't do anything about it in teamfights.
Yeah, I think if you just almost lure, and actually question, does Nahum play the Braum? Right? Like, I feel like here, Nahum is actually looking at his Trundle and thinking to himself, I mean, I could just rock the Trundle and... Oh boy, the Ezreal. We talked about Ezreal earlier, and if I know my Ezreal gameplay in bot lanes like I think I know them, what are the chances we're getting the damn cat in the bot lane with it?
At this point, I actually think, because the Braum hasn't been locked in, I think you'd lock in Braum, again, because you want something to peel back for the Aphelios, and you don't have the Thresh right now. You can potentially go for something like a Tahm Kench. I don't think it's fantastic unless it's with the Senna, but they're going to lock in the Set instead. So likely going towards Nap. I don't know whether Kaito plays it at all in that mid lane, but again, I'm kind of looking towards that support pool, and like Aphelios on his own, again, much like we were talking about with the Thresh and Aphelios back in game 2, and it's like, oh, Olaf with an Enchanter is good, Olaf on his own is bad. The combo of the Braum is the last premier peel 4 and 80 carry off the table. That'd be very dangerous to the side of CGA. Instead, Axiz just get the chance to ban it away if they want and lock in a flexible pick of that Renekton, which of course is something which Mega Man has thrived on in the past, and Inno has too.
Yeah, so Axiz got I actually quite like the Axiz draft here. Again, they have to change things up. Diego's gone, Jinx Thresh is gone off the table there. You have to start tackling new problems with different answers. As we're seeing, the first Narban of the series, if memory serves me right.
Yep, 2 games of it so far.
Now, no, Yumi, why? Why would you hurt me like this? Okay, so
guess you're more of a dog person. See, we don't have the pick ban quotes here, so I thought, I'd fill that in. I don't only just moonlight as a top laner, I moonlight as a voice actor too. Yeah,
all I'm saying, all that tells me is that you suspect a NASA support coming out, and that is the most horrific thing I've ever thought of.
So, funnily enough, I've been lucky enough to appear on the NLC a couple of times down this last split, and there is actually a Nasus player in the top lane there, a guy called Kerberos. He used to play in the UK university scene, so even more links to stuff that I've cast before. But it's slowly hanging in and about the area. Pick which has been banned in the first 2 games, but has managed to get through in this draft. Right away to pick 4 is that LeBlanc, which does mean that the Renekton will be going up in towards top side. Which, I mean, I expect the set to go up towards that top lane now, as the Zoe comes back in for CGA. A bit of a disjointed draft from CGA, though, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it looks all over the place, but then again, remember the position that CGA, as they lock in a Shen... Is that a Shen support, or is that Nahun with the set?
I reckon that Shen top. I reckon that Shen top set support. And I'll tell you why. Because in 2019, back in this finals, actually the semifinals and finals, Nap was playing versus V3 in the semifinals, where it went to 5 games, and his set in that series was seriously good. We haven't seen Nap's Shen rather for a very long time, but it is something which has been put down there in the annals of history.
I still think it could potentially be in the bottom lane, because we know Nahun has a bit of a reputation of playing champions and bringing them to the LJL stage. Obviously, we had the Trundle, which was his, the first pick of the Trundle we got to see then. They're not swapping it around. I'm getting a little concerned. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. I always get baited way too easily into what goes where. But I do kind of want to look at this mid lane. Because Kaido locking in the Zoe once again, not really a surprise coming into the third game of this series.
Okay, it's set top.
It is set top. Okay, lovely. So is Nahum bringing in yet another unique champion? Who'd have thought? But specifically in this middle lane here, you had to know that the Zoe was going to be locked in here for the likes of Kaito. So with the LeBlanc into... Because I'm not much of a mid lane player anymore. I was for a while, and then I
lucky
became
you've got me.
But yeah, like I said, luckily we've got a mid lane player who knows what's going on. Obviously, you knew the Zoe was coming. The LeBlanc's been banned all series. Is it that worthwhile committing to the LeBlanc in that matchup?
For sure. I mean, it's not just about the 1v1, but what LeBlanc has, which as a champion that has mobility and kill threat onto the Zoe, is also wave clear as well. You know, it's not just Zoe that just gets to instantly push the wave. LeBlanc can control a wave early. You have a strong mid-jungle 2v2. I'm trying to remember who they're... because they have the Lee Sin, of course. You know, so they have a very strong mid-jungle 2v2. Suddenly, the Zoe has to sit there every time you port jump forwards. Just the time where you basically self-CC yourself, so you can't be stepping backwards, is time that Hoglet can be using to ward hop and then flash kick you. And that's a very dangerous situation for Kaito. I look at this matchup now, and I think just in terms of the mid-jungle 2v2, CGA are vastly outgunned in the early game.
Yeah. And especially now in this bottom lane, I'm just getting really alarmed that CGA, like, coming into this game, we had the expectation that Nahum was going to have important pressure in the mid lane, and obviously Axiz plays through bot lane. That's kind of... We all saw that coming a mile away.
Yeah.
But that battle plan has kind of completely fallen apart, with Nahum in the bottom lane, Kaito just clearly struggling in this middle lane here. And I feel like Kassan tried to step up, right? We saw the Kha'Zix in game number 1, where it was an attempt to say, hey, we can actually... I'm going to try go toe-for-toe. Didn't work out. And now even in this game, rocking the Diana in the jungle, I feel like Kassan is going to have to do a lot. But what lane is he actually allowed to impact? Because it certainly ain't going to be the bot lane against an Ezreal.
Well, exactly, because you're using this effectively just to have you know, the Spirit's Refuge to stop a Renekton stun coming in, right? You're sat there just saying, wait, maybe I can outplay the Renekton W, so Milan can turn things around. Well, that's all well and good, but what happens if he just gets nuked from a mile away with LeBlanc jumping in and Ezreal follow-up damage? You don't have a way to stop that. They're all abilities. You can stop a Mystic Shot. That's great. That's really not going to be the killing factor against Milan in a team fight. So, once again, CGA, for me, with a very disjointed draft, and I mean, I'd say I'm worried for CGA, but I already was. And if they lose this game, that's it. We don't see them until next year at this point. CGA, a team which, you know, we have seen the highest highs, the lowest lows out of. Looking like they've rolled very, very poorly on the quintessential D20 of the LJL for this split.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they're basically trying to rival a barbarian in terms of raw strength. And as someone who rocks a barbarian, do not challenge the barbarian to an arm wrestle. You will lose, and then they'll likely eat your arm. Me, I don't know. As CGA,
Remind me never to play with your player characters.
Look, let's just say I picked the barbarian not so I could have a civil conversation with somebody. And leave it at that.
That's why you chose to be a caster as well, right?
Oh, basically. I mean, because the conversation is just easier, right? Like, I don't have to talk to anyone. I could just yell loudly and it kind of works as talking. CGA on the battlefield for the third time tonight here, and to call them underdogs coming into the third game, I think would be underselling just how strong Axiz have looked, specifically in game number 2. Now, obviously, things have changed coming into game number 3, but will it make an impact in the early game between our two junglers specifically? Is the question that I worry is the answer of Kassan's going to try something and Hoglet's going to kick him in the face really hard. Again.
Yes. Well, again, it's you know, one of my favorite quotes is something which you know, my brother and I reference over and over again. I read a lot of Terry Pratchett growing up, and there is a martial art practice within Discworld known as deja vu, which can only be described as the feeling that you've been kicked in the head this way before. Hoglet is, of course, you know, the Summoner's Rift practitioner of this martial art, as Nap also bringing out some bare fist fighting in the top lane.
Yeah, trying to do what he can. Obviously, the Renekton infamous for the early game pressure, the set. It was disgusting. I'm sorry. I played against way too many mathematically correct sets in the last like 2 months that I see that champion and I feel physically unwell. As is once again just sort of going to be left alone. I feel like this isn't anything new to us. As Nap actually did hit level 2 first, was not able to do much of a
So
push.
yeah, it is worth noting that. So we've got a couple of picks that I do want to talk about in terms of their success rates for Axiz, because Inno hasn't played that much Renekton in this split. Just in my mind's eye, I'm sat there thinking, yeah, he's played a lot of Gnar, played some other stuff, of course, the Gwen, but not huge amounts of Renekton. But in their first split, the wins that they did get right at the start of split were largely when Inno was on Renekton, was performing well on it. You know, he was doing well against, you know, your DFMs and everyone else, really. You know, he wasn't, you know, the primary carry, but he was being a force on that champion. You know, he's now coming back to it. Very interested to see how he does on that pick. On the other side, Ezreal has been a pick for Honey in the past. Not necessarily been their most popular or successful champion this split, as Hoglet is looking to have his variable early jungle pathing again. He slipped past Cassin's vision.
That's a disaster. Nap has no idea.
He hasn't seen. Oh, so well played.
He thinks he's safe, and obviously he's not. Nap is going to go down. Hoglet with some of the best vision play I've ever seen in League of Legends.
Oh my gosh, I mean, get him on a secret agent skin. I know he doesn't have one for that champion, but gosh, just getting right into the thick of things. Cassin does not want to take this fight, I don't think, but of course Megamin not having the mid lane priority means that Cassin feels emboldened to try and steal some Raptors, and actually will be able to steal them away. So first blood over to the side of the Lee Sin. Scuttle being killed by the CGA bot lane is important too, because if you start off with that Shadow, Shadow Dash, you can take the shield right off of the Scuttle. And Hoglet is now sat here being double scuttled and losing his own camp for the price of that first blood. And actually Cassin is going back towards top lane too. Great little fencing chess match even between these two junglers, making sure they had their impact felt early.
Yeah, and I must say CGA's response to losing their top laner was perfect. As we see a skirmish down in the bottom of there, they're waiting to see if we can drop that down. Damage being traded back and forth. The Infernum coming out there from Milan makes the trading hard. But again, I want to really talk about how impressive CGA's macro just was. Because you lose your top laner in a way where you're thinking, how the hell did Hoglet get behind you? But instead of panicking, Milan and Nahum immediately take Scuttle Crab and they double Scuttle.
And in a way as well that we don't, we rarely see rather from CGA. They normally do fall apart in the early game. They don't consider all of the follow-on effects of when they're committing members to a certain side of the map or committing to a fight. Suddenly having, you know, this point where you have a much better scaling jungler, one which is actually a damage threat in Cassin, with a huge camp advantage now, even against the first blood, that is something you can play around for CGA. No, you're not going to be winning that top lane matchup now. You don't have a flash. You've had that first death come in the wave state. Okay, the wave state's actually okay. I'll take that one back. CGA stabilized themselves in a way that we rarely have seen from this team in the last few weeks of the split coming into this series.
Yeah, and now the next question for CGA is obviously, well, what are you going to do with this advantage? Cassin is in a great position to start doing his team a solid, and I feel like that needs to come through, not just through, you know, securing the dragons and securing the Rift Herald, although obviously these teams will put a lot of priority on that, but I feel like I would love to see Cassin using, you know, the jungle lead that they built for themselves in a lane. I'm talking fine, and then the question comes, well, what lane? I don't feel like bot lane's easily gankable because Honey is just going to be so slippery.
Jarosa Diana. At the end of the day, you are looking for a 2-item spike. That's awesome. You know, you get yourself to Protobell and Azonius, and suddenly you are so ready to team fight. Cassin, gonna miss out on the wolves. Is it going to be smited away? Yes, it is. Hoglet smites the Merc Wolf.
Yeah, and Cassin's like, wait a second, but they're my wolves. What? Why are you like? I feel like Cassin was just dazed for a moment. Like, why is Hoglet hurting me? Oh no, Kaido, that's not the time to use that jump there. Hoglet does get pulled under turret. The next turret comes in and just turns it around. And Hoglet, that was. I know you're playing the blind monk, but you can't play that blind, mate.
So we've had barbarians rolling 1s and natural 20s. We've had smites from the paladins of the junglers coming in, and then we just see the monk just getting completely dragged under turret. Got a full-on fantasy fiesta in the enemy jungle under the mid lane out of turret. Cassin now potentially gone too far. Inno's roaming down.
Yeah, but I'm not sure Inno's going to find anything. And Megamin can't really set a whole lot there unless the chains are available for this LeBlanc. You can't really get a whole lot done on your own. And CGA finally changing down the drafting a little bit here. They look so much better when Axiz aren't, you know, punishing their bot lane with the jinx that hyper carry. Although I say that right as Milan getting caught out a little bit there. Just died on
Yeesh.
immediate cleanse, but the ignite is burning. Does have the
Just
serum, but
dies.
doesn't matter with the arcane shot burning them down there. Nathan tries to turn it around. Will he get the damage down? One more hit, but Honey doesn't give it down. Finally falls to the Diana of all champions there.
Kaito?
Junzoi Kaido, getting the Uber, buddy. I think you're a little bit lost.
Still a lost fan himself, not in Kansas anymore, and certainly wishes he could click his heels together and wish that he could go back home to mid lane in a safe state where the waves hit the tower. That would be nice, get himself some farm. Nation turning around some good damage in the 2v2, but Milan cleanses just half a second too early, because the ignite comes down after that point. Nemo outplaying that in terms of the mind game of when the summoners come down. Even with Chakram stacking up, just think they just time off before the play comes to bear. You see, cleanse comes out, ignite comes down. That's the full damage ready, and then just get the Q flash coming out of the Ezreal. And of course, the Spirit's Refuge not use at the start of this play means that of course that you can't end up using that to finish off the play after. Well, you can use it at the end of it, but it's just like, wait, would have really liked the Ophelos to be here at this point too. Missing you, buddy, and he joins him almost in the death round, but luckily survives that one.
Yeah, and it's a bit unfortunate there, Kaito. It looked really bad when we first saw it. He roamed down to try and help and just got collapsed on by Hoglet and Mega Man. That's kind of why, you know, when they did arrive in the bot lane, the Zoe's like, guys, I'm how to put this, I'm screwed, basically. When you're getting chased down, like Zoe's weakness is, you know, when she gets dived on. What does LeBlanc and Lee Sin do best? I'll give you a hint. It's relatively close range.
Yeah. Yeah, and now you're looking at this and you're saying, wow, okay, so the early impact that Hoglet had towards topside, good at the very onset of it, and then Cassin came back to wreak some vengeance, and he's coming back to really make a mark on mid lane.
Yeah, the chains land down there. You will come right back in. Now be careful, Hoglet, if you want to go back in. I've seen it once today already. I'd rather not see it twice.
No, he says, oh, not again, not doing that one.
I didn't know you had that ready to go. That's awesome.
You see, what I do is I make people forget about it for a few weeks, and I pull it out again. And yeah, I mean, doesn't want to chance it with the Zoe tracking me on the tower again.
Well, Axiz are going to rotate up for the Herald. And this is one of the first times we actually see the teams not sending everything to contest for that early Rift Herald. And instead, CGA said, look, take it, get your gold. The Dragon is where it's at right now. And I must say, I like CGA's call here. Honestly, I would prefer the Dragon to the first Rift Herald.
Yeah. So, one thing I do want to talk about, though, is actually, as much as CGA are, okay, very much in the losing scenario in all of these games, Cassin's been trying. Cassin has had a heck of a good series, and, you know, we expected Nahun to be the mid laner. We thought that, oh, maybe it was just an illness thing in the last week for Alchemy. Of course, you know, Ace had a similar situation. You know, it just happens, right? We didn't expect Nation to be just such a, you know, put into such an awkward position. This team to be put into such an awkward position and having to play around Kaito. That Cassin at least has managed to stabilize the ship in some way, keep themselves on their current form. And it is so sad that this rookie hasn't had the real team and the structure to really start building their image around and building their performance. Because I do genuinely think that Cassin is one of our shining stars in the jungle talent pool.
Well, let's go. Even in this particular game, in the series, yes, it is not looked best for CGA, but Cassin has done their damnedest here. And throughout the whole season, let's be fair to say, has fought like hell. Even in the games where CGA has had their fair share of struggles. There is a reason why Cassin typically has a high number of deaths, and I'm going to go more along the lines of you're trying to make the play that brings you back into the game. Now, 9 times out of 10, that will blow up in your face. But
so, I've been doing some content recently, and actually I talked about this in the context of LCS, because there's a guy called Yasuke who's doing a video on stats and how Niles, the poor LCS top lane, who's statistically the worst LCS player in history, is not nearly as bad as you think they are. And I think that actually Hoglet is someone who has struggled with this in the past, where it looks bad when they're dying in awkward situations, but they're still making the play that their team won't. And that's something which I think is so valuable, is they're trying to make the play under turret.
Yeah, but Milan does not get caught up with the Silverfett, but does get dived on by the Xenoblade, and unfortunately, with no Thresh to keep the Ophelio safe, he is a stationary target.
Oh goddamn, says Nation, as the one defensive tool he has in terms of the Spirit's Refuge, has his AD carry kicked out of. You know, he sat there thinking, well, I can block auto attacks. Well, you can't block the kick to the back of the head. We told you about this. It's a very fine martial art. Well, I will hopefully be remembering that one further into the future. Mega Man looking maybe to wave clear top, so I can double distort onto the wave. There's no Herald to push down this turret.
Yeah, and it's going to be too slow actually there. Meanwhile, Herald dropped on the bottom side, so that's
Exactly, well, that's where the Herald is.
Yeah, and now CGA are like, well, crap, we need to do something here. They are going to try to turn on to Mega Man, but I'm not sure that's the play. There is the rest of the Axiz lineup are just going to die on top of Nap, and maybe not reading the fact that Axiz were rotating. I feel like they're from Nap.
No, and once again, who does the gold go on to? 5 plays towards Honey, gets himself Divine Sunder on that back, sets up for success, and Sat is put down out of that same margin of advantage for CJ. Yes, they get 4 plays. Still dies. Still doesn't have a teleport to get back into lane. Kaito does get stunned in place. Luckily, Mega Man didn't have the cooldowns to punish.
Yeah, but this is as time and time again, Nemo. I must say, the Thresh we saw time and time again in games 1 and 2. Whenever Kaito decided to throw, get some harassment down, he was always throwing that death sentence, to the return portal. Well, we're seeing it once again. Leona does the same thing, right, with the Zenith Blade. The moment you see Kaito press that ultimate key, he's basically telling you as an engaged support, hey, I'm going to be back here in like 3 seconds, so if you want to bully me, here's your option.
Sadly, and this is one of the problems with the Lisa and LeBlanc, and then also champions like the Leona too. You're just too telegraphed. You don't have anyone to ensure your own safety. Again, you don't have a Thresh. That can be important for more than just your AD carries. Important for peeling away from your more vulnerable mid laners too. And as much as the LJL has had its host of incredible Zoe players, many of which we'll actually be seeing throughout this playoffs, and maybe we'll see it yet again, it has fallen off for a lot of different reasons, but one of the primary ones is there are a lot of champions which can punish you from jumping forward right now.
Yeah, in a world filled with engaged supports, the immobile mage is not having a good day.
For a second, I thought you were doing a Cards Against Humanity kind of thing. It's like from a world filled with blank.
I mean, I could have. I think I've got that somewhere. In this
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Some of the acts which have taken place in this one could be at home in such a crass game, as Axis really have no spared. There's been nothing to spare CGA's blushes, You're sad that it's been like, yeah, Axis are not pulling any punches here. They really want to get themselves beyond the first round of plus for the first time ever in only their second playoffs ever. So important for this organization. It's going to start maybe with another play down towards the bot side as takes a lot of damage there, actually.
Yeah,
all right.
Inno was more so setting up for Hoglet. We could see Hoglet lurking in the back there off of vision, and if we saw Kaito committing to the fight, there could have been something. But Inno has actually greeted through a wave here. This could just be straight up, this could be straight up Renekton just going to go down here. Kaito should not, doesn't land the Paddle Star, but will go down. Hoglet's like, I turned my back for a second and my top lane is dead. But besides, I can do this one better. Kicks it back in, but the Channel coming through there on the back end there. That's looking good. Axiz, will they be able to win the follow-through fight though? As Mega Man has arrived, but so has Nap on the backside. And now CGA are looking positive for this one. There's Kaito tries to land in support from the side. A beautiful haymaker though does put the fight in CGA's favor. Axiz though, very slippery members are still alive as the
everything misses.
Does not connect. I was trying to find a polite way to word that one, and despite all the skirmishing, the junglers lose their lives, and Nemo will join them back.
This is a pretty big fight for the side of CJ. Yes, Honey is still alive, but there's a flash. You don't want to take that E forward, Honey. It does have the cleanse. Speaking of that, just potentially seeing if there was a play to be made by our superstar AD carry in Honey on the one side, but he had to stand and watch his team just fall apart there at that point. As you're saying, caught up by Cassin, who is once again the one person who is continually threatening, keeping Axis on their toes, and keeps out of this fight. Hoglet gets the kick onto Cassin, but of course still has a Lunar Rush still available, and Hoglet after this point, as much as they had that 3 kills, as much as they have item breakpoints, didn't have a way to continue on that fight. Kaito does a decent job there of landing down some damage, but most importantly, stopping Mega Man from using his Mimic Distorts to actually get any damage done. Doesn't land it onto anyone. Suddenly you realize, wait, LeBlanc is meant to be bursty, does not have the consistent DPS. If you don't use your Mimic combo as well, you are not a valuable champion, and Mega Man does not get the ability to turn the fight after that point. And now we look at Kaito, 2-1-2, doing pretty fine on this Zoe.
Yeah, and finally it's looking nice and strong, and partly that is Cassin. We talked about the Diana earlier. It's finally making its due diligence. Like, we saw the champion start off well. He's now got a 40 CS lead over Hoglet in terms of just farming out the camp sufficiently. And now with the Rich Herald coming up, Cassin we know they're going to have their eyes set on this objective. They've got 3 minutes to make something of it. And I think CGA, they're in a good enough position where they can make that kind of play.
Though.
Oh, no, Nat, wrong throw, buddy. You get solar flared. Axiz are not letting this transgression go unpunished. The Haymaker to buy a bit of time, but it just doesn't matter.
Oh, Cassin!
And Cassin dives in, but doesn't have the damage on Megaman. Says, well, I can do you one better, mate. Pop goes the Diana, and now CGA, things started to look so good, but now they're being hunted down. Does dodge the true shot barrage from Axiz, but CGA, right as we start singing their praises, they make another mistake.
No, and even though, Milan gets out of that alive, does get the shield bow popped right at the end of it. Suddenly, one less tool to play around for the next minute or two. Axiz finding a fight after what seemed like it was going to be the godlike Diana roll. Nap gets caught out on the side, not able to impact this player, and this player, which I've talked so highly of, talked up in the series, gets caught out for yet another time. Axiz kind of flipping the script on what they normally do with their games, forcing on top lane in a way that they rarely do.
Yeah, and I do quite like it because, well, Inno has been the battering ram of many a top laner in the league here. As I mentioned, I think earlier in the night, but as well, I think it's worth mentioning again, is he has the least gold percentage out of any top laner, bar I think, or shared with one. So,
well,
the
thing is, you don't need a high gold percentage to be in the right place at the right time. That's the crux of it. No, gets right onto Nap, and yes, they do have the face breaker, uses it, but it's not nearly enough at that point. Yes, Cassin, great opportunity to try and get into the thick of things. You can see that the Lee Sin kick stops him from being in the optimal position too. Doesn't stop the damage coming down at that point, but the damage is already done by Axiz by taking one person off the board and understanding that doesn't matter what Cassin does, the follow-up damage is not there because Milan is not there for the follow-up. Again, disjointed team composition. No real follow-up for the Diana coming in unless Milan and Kaito are very, very on point. It's very hard to pull that off.
Yeah, and unfortunately, CGA do kind of look like, we often use the phrase in casting, not on the same page. I worry CGA aren't even in the right section of the library for some of these plays coming on, because we'll see, like just then, Nap is just trying to set up on a flank, but Milan and Kaito are nowhere available if he gets caught out of position, and that Axiz is posturing around the middle. So, Nap is reading the book like, we can maybe trade something around mid, and Milan and Kaito are reading How to Farm 101 because they want to go to the side to catch their waves.
Yeah, Cassin's reading Sun Tzu, reading The Art of War, and then you've got Milan who's playing with a Tamagotchi. Not even reading at this point. The Sadler's it's like, yeah, I've just got to, got some housekeeping I got to do. Sorry about this. I mean, as much, I meme about it in that case. You can't really follow up from that position. You cannot funnel into between that mid lane wall and the river wall as well. You go there and you just died with LeBlanc. You can see what happened to Cassin after that point. If that was onto Milan, that's arguably worse because you get to chase down and take a lot of turrets without the Aphelios wave clearing from that point. Nemo takes half of their HP for what feels like the nth time this game, but has only died the one time. They have a Zonia's, by the way, to keep themselves aligned in buildings. We've seen this more and more. It does occasionally happen, Kaito.
Oh no, there's the Q. Oh, Hoglet, his mind and his body are at war.
That was a heck of a lot of damage from the True Shot Barrage too. With only 10 seconds into the Ocean Rift, that's actually significant. Now suddenly, you're looking at a flash, double distort potential from Megaman, getting onto the main target. He's going into Nap, finds some damage. Again, Axiz turning the screws.
Yeah, and once again, oh my lord, no, Cassie, that's Axiz are looking great in this fight right now. CGA forced to run away. Nehu, no flash because he used it earlier to try flash taunt the LeBlanc and now forced to back away. Cassin, we talked about their tendency to die. Well, when you're trying to make the game-ending play, oh my god, what a game-ending play! Kaito gets caught out there. No flash used to save themselves. Milan holding onto the front line. Gets chained. What the? Milan! What is that play? That is balls of steel. Unfortunately, doesn't work out now. They can be executing the CGA jungler.
Oh my god, Crash wants his Diana ults back, let you tell you that. Actually, no, that would have been once. That was the prime culprit back in that godforsaken game. We see CGA trying to string together a semblance of hero plays. Cassin trying to go for the flash ult, doesn't get the timing right, doesn't land that. And sadly, we're going to have to see that in the replay again, as it's not often you see this multiple times in one split from one of our premier regions in the League of Legends scene. He just doesn't get the timing right. That's the sad fact of it. He's trying to get the hero play, and it doesn't work. The Shen ult comes in too late, it doesn't really work for anything. And then suddenly you look at the turnaround damage, and well, I mean, Axiz are outstatting you at this point. Honey turns around with as good as you get on a lot of these different plays. And yes, the Graviton sets up, but emboldened by landing skill shots, they just walk straight into the waiting more of Megaman. And yes, you have a shield bow. One extra auto, half a second more, and suddenly you get 2 kills from that. Suddenly that's a huge turnaround. But even then, that's an even fight, not a lost fight. So CGA once again find themselves at the worst end of a team fighting situation, which normally we praise them for. They're really just not hitting their stride today, and this will see them crashing out of playoffs if they don't fix it within the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of time to fix that up, but things are looking better in this game than I think they have in the other two. For example, at 22 minutes, they're not about, nearly 10k gold down, which I believe they were in the previous rounds, or damn close to here. Now, it is still down a decent chunk of, oh, this is a great Sleepy Shovel Bubble. Kaito could look for multiple plays, but didn't have the paddle star, I'm going to assume there, as the rest of Axiz TP in to save their superstar AD carry. There's a bit of chaos coming through as Ito dives into the backline there. Milan has been caught out. Hoglet not able to get the execution down as the Haymaker gets a nice damage output, but Hoglet gets the execute there. Milan trying to hold onto the front line with the chakras, but it just doesn't matter. And the culprit who started it all is the only member of CGA to escape with their life as Axiz turned to Baron.
And they're turning to Baron and Axiz. They have found their golden generation. They have changed everyone on the roster but Hoglet from that ill-fated roster of 2020 that we hoped for so much from. String together a couple of rookies, bring in another talent off of the Hawks as well, and Honey, who has found their wings on this roster, and Axiz have put themselves into a storming command of this series and potentially this lower bracket. We thought that all 4 of these teams looked fairly close. Into the last week, we saw the 4 teams trading wins between each other. The Hawks beating the Axiz, Axiz beating V3. I'm really looking forward to these lower bracket finals because Axiz on this form should be an absolute force to contend with.
Kaito's Q was on cooldown. That's why CGA got baited in. And then the overcommittal goes a little bit awry. Now, Milan does have access to the chakrams here, but he just gets stun chained for so long. Hoglet then dives onto the backline. Cassin tried to make a play, but it's just all downhill from here.
It is, because, I mean, honestly, that Zonya's got so much value from Nemo. It is a genuinely good item buy. We come back to live, and looks like Megaman's got caught out on a side lane. There might have been Shen just landing a taunt somewhere, but Nap gets the kill without even using the ult. Axiz slipping up a little bit in the 1-3-1, or in the 4-1, rather. They still get to keep themselves on the map, still keep themselves pushing in. Does dampen the pushing power a little bit now, though.
Yeah, it slows them down, but I don't think that'll stop Axiz, right? Like, I don't think they'll be able to take any of the tier 2s anymore, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, but, like, it could be worse, right? You are still 7,000 gold up. You can now start looking at the Dragons to really cement that lead a little bit more. And, okay, so what happened here? Was it just Megaman getting caught out? Yes? Wait.
I mean, let's just have a look. Cassin. Oh, wait. I actually didn't realize that Cassin was there for that play, because I only saw them, like, running the other side. I was like, oh, it's probably, just Nap and Nation doing stuff. And I was like, oh, wait, of course it's Cassin, because he's the one that's been leading the charge for the whole series. Get this guy a team, honestly. Get this guy a team.
He needs something more than what he's currently got available. Again, for CGA's team-wise, it's just really unfortunate that
it is. It's a lot of pieces which you can see the individual prowess of, which just aren't slotting together. They're trying to slot away a kill. Just another death for Nation.
Yeah, Nation trying to push up there. Again, like I was saying, the kick not going the way Hoglet wanted, but Cassin is likely to get caught out here. The showstopper coming in from Nap, though, gets Hoglet out of position. Cassin flashing to safety. Axiz overstayed their welcome just a spot, and typical Lee syndrome from Hoglet.
It is, and now you have a negative Baron power play. All things said and done, with 30 seconds left on the timer, they can probably push in for one bot lane in a turret, which is a bit of a luxury turret, all things said and done, because it is quite hard to push in towards a bot inhibitor, or in most of the inhibitors, let's be honest. But the last drags to the Baron buff, they will manage to get themselves just towards that positive. And, but CJ, hold on. Themselves a lifeline. They're still very far behind. It's not out, just lights out just yet.
Yeah, they're not dead yet, but it's, I think they're in the hospital, and, like, the Avengers cast is down in the lobby just in case they're needed, is where CGA are positioned right now. Because it's not looking great, But we've seen CJ in far worse positions in the previous round series. Honey
We have.
is leading the charge there, Inno on a flank as Mega
Ow.
Man. This is just harassment to stop CGA from coming to check the dragon here.
And this is honestly one of the problems of playing stuff like the Shen, like the Trundle as well, as opposed to something like Leonas, your Alistairs, even Rakan in some ways. You just get chunked out for free. Mega Man has got a death cap second item. You are sitting meat, dead meat. For this, so we do have potential Dragon Steel coming through, not gonna land.
Yeah, not gonna land there. The Soul Flare from Nemo. Enough to convince CGA that it maybe isn't worth dying for that kind of cause coming through. And it's only the second dragon, right? Like, it's not the end of the world if they
It
take
would
a
have got them
second
soul point is the one thing. The problem is, after that
Yes.
point, if you lose the Diana and they die, and, you know, it's a clean kill, suddenly Axiz get to push him for free. Because, you know, much like I was talking about in game 1, I think it was, actually, when you see, like, odd kills just randomly unbalancing the map, you give up the strongest member on your map on the Diana, who is the crux of your team composition. You don't really get to fight after that point. You don't get to get those opportunistic picks, which we saw like onto Mega Man in that bot side. And CGA would probably just fall apart at the seams at that point, just get torn up.
Well, CGA trying to avoid that for now, but it hasn't been going brilliantly as the gold lead continues to escalate against them. And it does sell it quite nicely that the top 3 members in terms of experience are all members of Axiz. They're Inno, Mega Man, and Honey, leading the charge. Cassin, I think it's unsurprising at this point, the highest leveled member of CGA, with just how proactive they are trying to be, regardless of wherever it hits or it goes a little bit off.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's the one person making the plays. Hog diving into terrorist area again. Seen how that's worked out before, but does block both Summoners and Kaito, which is very, very important because we've seen how over-aggressive they have been and how much that has punished them in the past. So Hoglet gets to walk away with a Sterix cooldown burn, but that's about it. Gets to reset, almost buy themselves up a GA as well. They got stopwatch inventory, which is very important if they're looking for more of those very deep dives. 30 seconds onto Baron. Axiz have themselves again control of the map, control of the series, control of playoffs lower bracket right now.
Yeah, and right now for CGA, it's kind of a miracle run if they're able to do this. Because of course, remember, this is the best of 5 series where Axiz are 2-0 up. This has to be the full reverse sweep if CGA want to keep their playoff dreams alive. Because these teams, they are still fighting for a spot at Worlds. Now, yes, I know, I'm sure someone in Twitch chat's thinking, but Axiz still has to get through. Yeah, DFM and Rascal Jester both exist, and yes, but you've got to, this is the first step on their journey, right? And if CGA can pull this off, it'll be a spectacular story. If they can, recover this game and go into the next day. But there are so many teams waiting, and CGA has shown that they are far too mortal for a playoffs run to not kind of blow up in their face.
No, but again, there are eyes on the LJL after MSI, after what DFM achieved there. But their eyes mainly on DFM. As much as we love ourselves a bit of Axiz, as Cassin really doesn't like this LeBlanc right now, gonna get locked up. Does have the flash, might have to use it. Going in for a play.
The fight actually there, but Hoglet gives him a boot, says, Nahyun, you can join in the execution because that's all this is for CGA as they pile in for the rest of the fight. But Axiz is looking great. Inno diving into the backline buys so much room, and CGA just aren't allowed to actually play the team fight that they then get caught in as Kaido just gets dived on Hoglet and Honey. He says, thank you very much. Milan is not even allowed to retreat to the base as the last man standing drops to the ground. Tragedy striking the rift, and CGA, that blue buff may be the thing that sends them home.
All for a blue buff. I'll trade you a blue buff for a series, and of course they die, so it goes right back over to Mega Man. Axiz dominant in the broken skirmish. Look like they're on the same page. Look like they're on form. Look like they are contending in these playoffs.
Yeah, and then now charging forwards, and the first Nexus is going to go down. The second Nexus turret is victim Nahyun forced to watch as the CGA base falls apart. Cassin comes out, but unfortunately, it is far too little, far too late. Resist, struggle, it doesn't matter. Axiz take the game and take the series 3-0.
Dominant showing from Axiz. A little bit of a slip slide in game 1. Potentials being out fought in general, but Axiz keep a steady hand on things and just run back 3 games back to back with dominant performances.
Yeah, and what a showing from Axiz. The third seed coming into the playoffs run here. They got to choose who they had to go up against between CGA and, of course, the Hawks. They looked at CGA and they said to themselves, look, this is a team that we're confident we can find weakness in. We can find the Achilles heel. And it was a very quick find coming in for the likes here. And again, all of this for one blue buff for Cass. And the man leading the charge for CGA, unfortunately, is the man getting caught out for the end of it.
Yes, but, you know, when you're playing this far back, you can't just allow yourself to get bled out in so many different ways. Yeah, you've got the Aphelios, but you can't just allow yourself nothing on the map. They try and go for it, and eventually they get caught out. I mean, well punished by Axiz at the end of the day. So far ahead, get to take those kind of opportunistic plays with aplomb.
Yeah, and of course, Axiz looking... I'm not going to say unstoppable. There were several signs here where Axiz did look more than... having fun. Like, Axiz looked mortal here, but I feel like the biggest thing, if I'm, V3 or the Hawks looking at this series, after whoever wins their next one they do, I'm looking at this team and thinking to myself, well, they looked human, and as long as you tackle them, I think, well in draft, they are takeable.
Potentially. And, they lost in that very last week of regular season to the Hawks. And suddenly I was thinking, actually, maybe the Hawks look like the best team in the lower bracket. But after a series like this, where Axiz understand their, their points of power, understand what their champions are that they succeed around in the style that they want to play, they are such a difficult team to deal with now. So, I mean, we are going to have a post-game break at some point. Anything you want to add in just before we go to a quick break?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything. So, of course, that will mean that Axiz will be taking that next step forwards. But we can talk about that and much more after a short break here at the LJLOU. So, guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a bit.
To hold our heads up high and beat the drum to what we love. Risk the follow, we have felt it all come crashing down from far above. Stars are rising, countless worlds colliding, only one will take it all. Can we bring to fall the giants? Can we make the final call? We are the ones to ignite the darkened skies, the champions of a world that we defy. Our soul bring to fall the giants? Can we bring to fall the giants? Can we bring to fall the giants? Can we bring to fall the giants? We are the ones to ignite the darkened skies, the champions of the world that we defy. A solar ray of the few who rise up high, and we all fight at the last light.
It's no longer midnight, and we've lost our brother from the down under of midnight. Thank you very much to him for casting. He had to dip out, but we've got Nymera. Hello, sir.
Hello, hello.
What an
Been
incredible
listening to you
series
guys-
we've had.
Yeah, no, but fairly quick as series go. It maybe extended 10 minutes too long in each kind of game, but definitely one which got sent to the history books fairly quickly.
Absolutely, and history has been made, but we'll get onto that one in a moment. Melvin, welcome back to the desk, sir, as always.
Thank you muchly. I'm glad that we had a nice, safe in-flight movie of that game right there. That was, not too far out of the ordinary. It had a bit more action than expected, but still the intended result.
Well, myself, Swan, Nymera, and Melvin Izzle, I will be here to break down the full series, the full 3 games, that 3-0 that Axiz did have, and that many of us did predict. And I think a perfect place to start off is that we predicted so many of this partly because of that support change. Again, our hearts go out to Alchemy. Hope you get well soon, sir. Nation having to fill in, Kaito having to play in that mid lane, and Megamin, for the first time, I would confidently say gapped someone. So, Nymera, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, not something I necessarily thought about like before, but
Mm.
in the series. But at the start of it, actually, I was thinking, oh, actually, maybe there's a chance that Mega Man just gets to just have a bit of a freebie, actually. In the same way that we were talking about in the regular season, particularly back in spring, that we were looking at Burning Core versus CGA as a matchup where
Yeah.
both bot lanes thought they were actually kind of had a leg in that race. This one seemed like Mega Man had a chance to have a dominant best of 5 against a lane that wasn't just gonna dominate him really and just put him under the cosh and make sure that he didn't get to play the game. So I think it's a very valuable experience to Mega Man to be in a position where they can team fight effectively and play with a team that's ahead. I think this is going to be very important for this player because they played the role well today.
And they played 3 different champions. Like, what more can you ask from a rookie player? Again, was over from that rookie. And it's something that me and Melvin Izzle talked about while you guys were doing that incredible casting. Again, hats off to you, sir, as always, as always. There was an amazing performance from just the whole side of Axiz in so many different ways. It felt like they were truly the team you could never team fight, Melvin Izzle.
Every time we saw these teams walk at each other, it ended up backfiring, and a lot of it was on Nemo's back for a large majority of it, being such a nuisance when they were on the Thresh, buying so much space, especially in Game 2, landing some pivotal hooks that realistically set up fights that CGA had no good way of winning. And then that last one, I will say the third game was probably Kaito's best performance on the Zoe, but when you're playing against Nemo on this Leona, every time you went forward, there was always the risk of just getting jumped on by a Zenith Blade.
Every single time. You just couldn't stop him from jumping in. It was very aggressive from Kaito, but this is the difference between a mid laner who came in off the scouting grounds and kind of had to go through the gauntlet that was Dasher, that was Arya, week in and week out. And Kaito, who we're hopeful will have an amazing academy career, then potentially LJL, and we'll see where the sky is for them. But we'll have to know when that is. Gentlemen, on our break, we talked about our player of the series. We tried to discuss and understand who we would pick. And I think a lot of people are going to be expecting a certain player with a H. Now, that could be two people, but it's not. It's the player with the N, and it's Nemo for the player of the series. Nemo, what a performance he had. And I want to come over to you first, Nymera. This man's hooks just felt point and click worthy.
Absolutely. And, I mean, we basically everyone in our Discord in terms of the production had a vote on this, and we pretty much had every arrangement of Nemo, Hoglet, and Honey in terms of player of the series. Just about edged out was Nemo right out in front, and the Thresh was pivotal to making sure the team fights were playable for the side of Axiz. I mean, I felt in both of those Thresh games, he was crushing the 2v2, punishing, albeit, we do expect CJ to have a weaker bot lane, but, he just put them to the sword, and the team fights were no different. In that last game as well, the Zhonya Leona becoming such a threat at diving in, tanking a sleep, and then Zhonyaing right through it. Guy is a mechanical prodigy right now, didn't have the greatest spring, but this summer is the split of Nemo.
Melvin is, I mean, we were talking about that Zhonya Leona, and it was just kind of cracked. And his game too, he was the one initiating, he was on starting, and he was the one that got Honey to an incredible place, really.
The fact that Axiz were allowed to run Thresh plus the Jinx twice in a row really solidified for us when we were just sitting back watching, like, okay, so Game 3, it really needs to go all up in the air if there's a hope for CGA to come back. And you have to say that taking Nemo off the Thresh did actually buy some space in the series, because it meant that every mistake that Axiz did end up making wasn't just get out of jail free card by a lantern. It meant that you actually had to take the straight up fights. We even saw it sometimes around the bottom lane when Kassin was effectively 1v3ing after a point. They had to collapse him with Nathan on the Shen. And